Hi everyone, I am Jason Alcott, author of The Sewing Principle. Welcome to the channel, welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here today. I want to pick up today about our trip to Europe. Remember a couple of weeks ago we were talking about if you traveled to Europe and you're coming home and you've got that big piece of luggage, you decide to say, I'm not going to unpack that piece of luggage, I'm going to delay that for my future self. Anyway, today, let's imagine that you actually haven't gone on the trip to Europe yet, but you've actually booked your trip to Europe. Let's say it's a year from now. You're not going to go for a couple of weeks, you're going to go for a month, maybe even 2 months, and you decide that you want to really experience a country, not just the big cities, but you want to get outside the city. And let's say you pick the country of France and you're looking to explore the countryside of France and you want to go out there and meet the people and feel the towns and just really experience what it would be like to live there, even if it's just in a limited amount of time. But you recognize that if you're going to go to France, one of the best ways that you could be able to have more freedom as you move about the country, to learn about the country and its people and its history, would be if you had a base understanding of the language. So you decide, you know what, I am going over the next year to discipline myself to learn some of the fundamentals of the French language so that hopefully you can have just a little bit of conversation and be able to free up your ability, give you the freedom to move about in that country. Not obviously as a native, but that you have that freedom to be able to have some level of communication as you move about France. And so you do the work, you discipline yourself, you study every day, just a little bit every day, and you gain and you grow, and you've got a base understanding of the French language, and you drive into that first little town and you walk into that bakery, you're about to order your first croissant and they say, bonjour, comment ça va? And you say, ça va bien, and you've got a big smile on your face because you disciplined yourself to have that freedom to be able to carry on that sort of base conversation as you've arrived in the country. Now, please forgive me for my horrible French, but the point I'm trying to make here today is that discipline is the pathway to freedom. Or as Jocko Willink says in his book, Extreme Ownership, which I know we talked about last week, but it's got this other great chapter in there where he talks about this idea that discipline equals freedom. And it's so counterintuitive to the way that our brain thinks that I thought it's definitely worth touching on today. Because if you talk to people, we all want more freedom in our lives. We want more time freedom or control over the time in our life. We want more financial freedom, the ability to make financial decisions that make sense to us, that line up with our values. We want the freedom in our health. Right? I want to be able to have health in such a way that I can go out there, experience life, live life with my kids, travel, explore the world, go on hikes, whatever that is. I want health freedom, right? We want more freedom. But as Jocko talks about in his book, it's so counterintuitive, but the pathway to freedom, every one of those freedoms, is through discipline. If we think about time freedom, if you want more time freedom in your life, you actually need to get more disciplined with the time that you have, right? Like I get the opportunity that if I want more time freedom, I can be more disciplined with my mornings to kind of set out how I do that. We've talked about that a lot recently. What do you put into your mornings? How do you make your mornings as effective as possible? By getting more disciplined in my morning, it actually frees up more time in my day. And if I can be more disciplined in taking care of the things that need to be taken care of now, then I'm not delaying those or creating problems or assigning tasks to my future self. If we want more financial freedom, we actually have the opportunity to learn to live below our means, live well below our means, operate inside of a budget and have financial goals and savings goals that will create that financial freedom for us in the future. It's this sort of give and take, but it's sort of this backwards way of thinking. I want more freedom, but in order to get there, that pathway is through discipline. And I know that sounds odd, that's exactly what I'm trying to avoid. I don't want more constraints, I want less constraints, I want freedom. But the incredible thing is that when you step out on this pathway to create more freedom in your life through discipline, through small disciplines, you actually create more opportunities, you create more margin, you create more capacity. When you've got more time, that means you can spend more time with your family or on the things that you value. Imagine back our example of traveling to France. Well, if you decided that you didn't want to follow through with learning any of the basics of the French language, your trip would be impacted significantly by your ability to communicate as you moved through rural France, right? That would change the dynamics of that trip significantly. I'm sure it would still be an amazing trip, but you wouldn't experience the same level of freedom, the same level of ability to be able to connect and to have an impact while you were there. Now, this concept doesn't just apply to your personal life, it applies to your leadership life as well. Your role as a leader, as someone who serves your team and your organization. And Jocko talks about this in his book, but when you put out this idea, discipline equals freedom, and you share this concept with your team and you're like, hey, we're actually going to get more disciplined, you're probably going to get some pushback. If you think of your team, there's no one on your team that wants to be micromanaged, correct? There isn't anybody that wants to have somebody standing over their shoulder saying, hey, do this at this time, this at this time. I want to know what you're doing every 10 to 15 minutes a day. That's not helpful. But if you all have an idea of what the desired outcomes are, and if there's disciplines that you can put in place, like standard operating procedures, things that can be done on a consistent basis that will actually allow your team to become faster, become better, and become more consistent in the work that they do, that will open open up doors of opportunity. It will open up freedoms to be able to pursue other projects, to be able to grow the company, to be able to create more profit or create more impact through the organization you're a part of. That often comes through really simple disciplines, the little ideas of, this is the way that we do things, and then you do them consistently over time, and it starts to create that flywheel, which we've talked about. Those simple disciplines lead to more freedom for your team. Jocko has this great example in his book where he was a part of a team over in Iraq. He was leading a team, and their mission was to go out sort of each night, and they were searching these buildings and they were gathering evidence. And they sort of used to go in with this smash and grab mentality. They're really good at finding things, right? Like they had no problem tearing the place apart, but they would lose track of who had searched what room and, had this room already been searched and et cetera, and they couldn't attribute the evidence to where they had found it because it was sort of haphazard. So they were really good at getting the job done, but the way they were doing it was really haphazard. And so he tasked one of the people on his team to say, hey, look, is there a better way for us to do this? And they came up with a really great way to do it. It was relatively simple, straightforward. They were able to assign each person to be responsible for an individual room so that you were never searching the same room twice and no room would get missed. But when he proposed this idea to the team, there was a lot of pushback. There was a lot of pushback going, hey, we don't need that. That's not going to make us more effective. We're really good at what we do. And then they actually tested it out. They did a couple of trial examples and they were all able to come on board and recognize and see, hey, you know what? This actually is more effective. This actually does make us faster. And they could actually deliver better results right away once they started to put some of these practices in place. That's the opportunity that you get as a leader, is to identify what are the areas in your work, in your business, in your organization where you can say, hey, you know what? I think we can be more effective if we streamline this and say we all do this the same way and it becomes simplified. So everybody does the same thing every time. Maybe it's the way you answer the phone. Maybe it's the way you work with customers, the way a job starts or the way a job finishes. This is the way we do this every time. It's going to be simple, no surprises. That's the expectation. You set that for the team and then you can run in that. It creates more freedom because everybody knows what's happening. Now you might come to me and say, you know what, Jason, I understand, but in my personal life, I'm not a self-disciplined person. That's not who I am. And we've talked about this before, and I really want to bring your attention to it again because I think it's really important. I want to bring your attention to a Bible verse. It's in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. Paul says this in 2 Timothy verse 7, "For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline." Think about that for a second. That's the Spirit that lives inside you right now. He's given you that self-discipline. That means that I know when I look at self-discipline and I look at the things that I'm trying to get done and I go, you know what, I don't think I can do this, but I have to tell myself, you know what, I can't do this on my own. I need God's power. I need God's strength to be a part of my life. I need to bring him into this conversation. I need to bring him into this conversation in my personal life, and I need to pray about this conversation that I'm having with my team. Ask for his wisdom. Ask for his spirit of self-discipline to show up in me. Take that pressure off of yourself when you're sitting there beating yourself up going, you know what, I'm not a self-disciplined person. You're right. You know what, you're not. But God's Spirit inside you is. He has given you that Spirit. So you can lift that up to him. You can say, hey, Lord, I need your help on this one. Let's work together. How can we make this more of an opportunity in my life to be self-disciplined so that I can see and realize the freedom that I know that you want me to have? Because freedom opens up the opportunity for you to have more impact in your community, to have more impact with your finances, in your family, in your time, and the time that you're able to spend with your kids, or the time that you need to be able to spend with your neighbors, or whatever it is. When you have time freedom, financial freedom, all those things that come from being self-discipline, it's going to allow you to have more of an impact of what God wants to be able to do in and through your life. So I love this verse. It's constantly coming to mind for me. This power, this self-discipline, that comes from him. Lean into that truth today and take that and run with that when you're thinking about this idea that discipline equals freedom. That discipline is the pathway to the freedom that you're looking for. So today I want to challenge you, not to learn French, but I want to challenge you to look at your life and go, where do I want to create more freedom in my life? Just pick one area. Where do I want to create more freedom in my life? And what's a self-discipline? What's that simple step that I can begin to take on a consistent basis that's going to lead me down that path to freedom? I'm so excited for everything that God is doing in and through you. I'm excited about the personal growth journey that you're on. I'm excited about the leadership growth journey that you're on. And I'm really excited about the ability to be able to connect with you on a weekly basis to uplift and encourage you. Have an absolutely blessed rest of your day, and I look forward to connecting with you again next week.